Welcome to episode 5 of the Viking Voices podcast, and today I'm joined by Cory Anderson, who's now the director of the foundation. Did I get that right?
Yes, that is close enough.
Okay. Oh, so what's the official title?
Executive Director for University Advancement. Sometimes it's called the Foundation Director.
Okay.
So you were really good.
Okay, I appreciate it. I try to do my homework before this, and then we'll get to these in a bit. I put a little money into the podcast. I think these cost about 6 cents each to print. So we have a budget now, about a quarter per episode. But Cory, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Let's start. I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Obviously, I've got to know you really well over my 3 years and change here. But for those who don't know, where'd you grow up and how'd you end up here, both as a player, as a coach, and we're going to dive into that later too.
Cory Anderson. I'm from Mackville, North Dakota. It's a small community. My graduating class was 16, which I found out is larger than yours.
That's right.
Which is very interesting. There's not very many times that I meet people who have a smaller graduating class than mine. So a really small farming community, and grew up in a family of 4 other brothers and sisters that were all older than me, 11, 12, 13, and 14 years older than me. So I was almost like an only child. And we were on a small farm and grew up with a really good life that way. Wouldn't trade that farming life in for anything. And with parents who allowed us to partake in athletics. And I can't say that they were athletes themselves, but my siblings were, and so that gave me an opportunity to foster a love for that and the opportunity to do those things. And really had a lot of friends in high school who were very good at the sports that they played, and probably brought some attention to us. And lo and behold, there was a coach at Valley City State who was also an official at that time, and he officiated a lot of our football games and started officiating me. And recruiting me when I was in punt formation sometimes. And so, as you probably realize, Valley City State's got a lot of educators, and a lot of the coaches that we played against were former Vikings. And former Vikings have a tendency to let coaches that coach them know about prospective athletes, and that's kind of how it started. And I ended up here in 1984 as a student athlete, and the rest kind of is history, as they say.
Yeah. So you were a football, baseball guy. What were you originally recruited here for? Was it kind of both? Was it football or was it the baseball?
It was actually both. Coach Dewitt saw me, like I said, in football often. He was officiating our games, and then we would play baseball down here in the summer in tournaments, and happened to have a really good outing through a no-hitter in a tournament here.
Wow.
And that kind of got me on his radar for the baseball side.
As it should.
And it was, he had guys that were teammates of mine that were older than me and already on the roster. And so that obviously helped in the recruiting. And most of my teachers in high school were Valley City State grads. Mm-hmm. And so that helped, with the recruitment as well.
Right. Well, I know one of the guests, I can't remember which one it was, but it might have been Tammy, who we had a couple weeks ago, and she said it's hard to go to a small town in North Dakota and not find a Valley City State education major. So, yeah, there's definitely connections for that. And so we'll start. I'd love to just start with football because that's the season that starts first. So you come in, you're a freshman. What positions did you kind of play, and how did that freshman year initially look?
So I came in as a quarterback, and I had also spent a lot of time kicking and punting in high school, and so I did all of those things. We had a senior quarterback named Steve Becker, who was a quarterback of back-to-back conference championship teams, a West Fargo Packer. Actually, yeah, he was West Fargo. I was going to say, then he went to Wahpeton to coach. But Steve was a very good influence, and it was a really good quarterback room. We had a lot of talented individuals in that room, and so that was really a learning year because we played 9-man football where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And so now all of a sudden you're in 11-man. And, Coach Dew was a college quarterback himself. And so we had the opportunity to learn a lot of things from him. And then on Saturdays, Bob King, who's a very well-known person in North Dakota sports, would come and help during game days. And I learned a lot from Bob King. So I was really blessed to have great mentors, and we had JV football at that time as well. So we had the opportunity to play at least a little bit of football even as a freshman. And then that took me into the sophomore year. Steve graduated, and we recruited a young man named Darren Lowe, who went on to be an All-American quarterback here and be drafted by the Mariners in baseball. And
I was going to say he's on my stat sheet here.
And one of my really good friends, somebody who was in my wedding and vice versa. And so that kind of took me into different roles where I held on extra points. I did a little bit of kicking on long field goal situations and kickoffs, and handled the punting duties, and was the number 2 quarterback. And really started to get my love for coaching. Mm-hmm. And my sophomore year, my junior year was more interesting because Coach Dew came in and said, hey, we have Darren for 2 more years. We would only have you for 1 more year. I'd love to have that safety valve. And we need another coach. Would you consider coaching this year and being up in the press box and seeing things from up top and just helping me out? And so I took that opportunity, which really entrenched me in the nuts and bolts, and I learned so much that year, like mm-hmm. way more than I probably would have playing, being in the meetings. And one of the coaches that year that we had on staff was Dale Lennon, who went on to become the head coach at the University of North Dakota and at Southern Illinois. And actually, I'm going to rephrase that. He was a defensive coordinator at UND, head coach at Southern Illinois. But obviously a really good football mind, and so, had the opportunity to learn a lot and be mentored through that whole process.
That's very interesting because you don't often see someone join a coaching staff, especially when they're a junior. You think, well, maybe your 5th year or a GA, but that's an interesting transition. So how did the conference kind of look back then? Obviously, we've seen, and we're going to see again, turnaround and playing different teams. And I know we just might have played the Jamestown Jimmies for the last time for who knows how long. But how did that kind of look back then? What was the schedule like as far as football went? So
the conference at that time period was called the North Dakota College Athletic Conference. And it contained Dickinson, Minot, the University of Mary came in at that particular time to be in school in the conference. And then Mayville State and Valley City and Jamestown. And then, interestingly enough, Bismarck State Junior College and North Dakota State College of Science were also in our conference as 2-year schools.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, and so that was very interesting to have them in the school, in the conference as 2-year schools. But, Valley City State had a great history in that conference. One of our taglines is we had the most conference championships of anybody in that particular conference. And, Bill Osman, who the bubble is named after, was a very historic coach in men's basketball, won many championships. Obviously, Coach Dew in both football and baseball. And, we had a really good coaching staff that was not very large.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Bass. Don Lemnis had the wrestling and was a defensive coordinator, but those guys were all very successful coaches and recruited really well within the state of North Dakota, and so that was the makeup.
So were the two-year schools, were they there because of a lack of 2-year schools in the region, or is it just for the competition aspect?
Yeah, so they were able to play other 2-year schools, but this gave them probably a more localized schedule, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You think about it, and then in those days, travel budgets were a really big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we weren't traveling in football in 2 charter buses. We were in probably one bus, and we have travel roster limits,
Right.
and then we're taking a people mover or vans or things like that. So playing in-state was a priority.
Right. I was actually going to ask too, like the dynamic of. I had I had all the baseball questions too. I have a lot of questions for you, but I was going to ask kind of how like the travel differed back then, and kind of how. I don't necessarily know how to word it, but just like the general team flow. Like, how is sports different? How is that different back then as opposed to now?
Well, in football, we played a lot of night games. In fact, mostly night games. And South Dakota Conference was called the South Dakota Intercollegiate Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been Northern State, Dakota Wesleyan, Dakota State, the South Dakota Black Hills schools. And so we played night games. So we would go to Dakota Wesleyan and play a 7 o'clock game or a 7:30 game.
Wow.
So you leave during the day, and then you play the game, and you're getting home at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not unusual. And even when we got into the Dakota Athletic Conference and we would go to Black Hills and South Dakota Tech, you'd play a night game, and you're getting back at 4 or 5 in the morning. And so what I remember from traveling is you got home almost when the sun was coming up. And
Right.
that was just part of the deal. But when you were at home, you had night games, and it was the greatest atmosphere ever.
Big time. Yeah, that definitely shifts it. And was there a reason for the night games? Like, was it just to accommodate travel? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
There wasn't. I have a hard time remembering having an overnight stay very often when I was in college football.
Yes.
A little bit later on in the late 80s, we played down in the Metrodome. I remember staying down there in our national playoff year. We stayed in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, but there was not very many times we stayed overnight.
Okay, interesting. And now it's such a routine thing
It
that
is.
people take for granted in the hotels and the pools and the continental breakfasts and all that.
And basketball teams leaving the day before
Yes.
events.
Yep.
That's just a standard practice that when I was a commissioner, that's just how it happened.
Right.
And I found that to be really remarkable. We didn't think about what travel did to our body because it was never told to us that it did something to our body.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't know, you don't know.
Right. Well, I know professional sports teams too are like they're building their travel schedule based on sleep and rest and all
Yes.
that. And it's like obviously the new discoveries, obviously something that probably wasn't at the top of the priority list and when
Yeah.
you were playing sports. But I'd love to flip to baseball now
Yes.
because I have again a lot of obviously I'm a baseball player,
Yep.
so I'm gonna have a million questions. Let's start with just obviously you told me that the no-hitter probably helped your case for recruiting, but same thing, kind of freshman year, you're coming off of a football season,
Yep.
coming in, kind of. I know we had one of our guys a little while back played football, then he came to baseball. How's that transition? Kind of, you're meeting your teammates, kind of 3-4 months after you would be, right? So how's that transition kind of for you as a two-sport athlete?
It was way different then.
Okay.
Coach Dew was the head football coach and the head baseball coach.
Right.
So he recruited a lot of dual sport athletes. Darren Lowe, who I mentioned, quarterback, pitcher. Our shortstop was our wide receiver. We had a lot of dual sport athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew each other very well even by the time then the football season and baseball season started. We were familiar. And if not, it didn't take long. I mean, baseball players were pretty easy to get along with, I think. And so, you jumped in and you just started. And my freshman year, it was kind of baptism by fire. Coach Dew threw me in. I was a pitcher shortstop coming in, and I was playing my first college game in Enid, Oklahoma, and I'm starting in right field. And had not played outfield ever.
Yeah.
But if you hit, he was going to get you in the lineup, and that's how it ended up. So I played a lot of outfield that year, and through some innings, we were fortunate enough to win a conference that particular year.
Wow. So you were right in first game. Enid, Oklahoma.
Enid, Oklahoma. It's
okay.
Phillips University. They were the Phillips University Haymakers. They ended up going to the NAI College World Series that year.
Wow.
And people. Enid, Oklahoma is the home of Mark Price. Now you're not going to know who Mark Price is, but he was an NBA player. Okay. Georgia Tech is where he went, but at that time, that was kind of how we knew where Enid, Oklahoma was.
Okay.
So
we're headed down to Oklahoma this year. My first time in Oklahoma. We're going Randall University. I don't know what city or town that's in, but it's gonna be. We go Kansas, back up Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It's gonna be some travel. What was that for travel? How was that?
So we were very fortunate because my freshman year going to Oklahoma was the farthest south we'd ever went as a university, and the importance was playing games. We wanted to play games, and they had been going to Kansas and Nebraska and getting snowed out or weathered out and not
early,
getting
right?
games in, and so we went down there and we played 7 days and played 14 games. I mean, we played a doubleheader every day. And we didn't have the pitching staff that you have now.
Right.
So if you were a pitcher and you were starting, you were probably going to throw Saturday, Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, or something along that line. You were going to get 3 starts, most likely.
Yeah. No, I can see based on the. Let me see. So this would have been 85, right? Because that would have been your freshman year. So this is how many pitchers I'm counting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yes.
So you got 10 pitchers going for 14 games. Yeah, that would throw some coaches for a loop now, because now you have your 8th inning specialist. You have your first out of the pen guy. But no, I like that. So that must have been like your kind of spring trip where you were all excited for, yeah?
Oh, for sure. And we played great baseball teams. Our records, even when I got into coaching, and in my first few years, we went to Oklahoma City all the time, and that's some of the best baseball you could find in college baseball is in Oklahoma, and especially in Oklahoma City in that suburb area. There were so many schools that you could base yourself there and play 10 different schools if you wanted to. And you played great competition, and eventually, my junior year, we didn't have a great trip down there. I think we went 1-13, and we came back and ended up winning the conference and going back down there and beating teams that had beat us at the start of the year, because they had probably played a dozen games by the time we played them.
That's right.
And I think that my junior year, we had a lot of really close games that we lost. And most of those schools now are D2 schools that play in the MIAA and have moved up, just like Minot and Mary. But we had some close losses down there, and we knew that if we got back down there, we'd have a good shot at it.
Right. Now, was Enid your 4-year or your 4-year? Was Enid your like spring trip for all 4 years, or did you mix it up a little bit?
So Enid was on the way into Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And so we would always go to Oklahoma City and base out of there, and we would play Oklahoma City University, Oklahoma Christian, which is now Science and Arts, I think. Central State, which is now, it's in Edmond, but they're a D2 and they have a different name.
Oh yes, I think actually one of the Nixons played. Yes,
He did.
Central Oklahoma. I don't know.
It might be Central Oklahoma or something like that. I can't remember. I know that Darren Lowe, who we talked about, played in that. He coached in that league. Okay. So he'd send me a picture from Edmond every year because he knew we played there. In Shawnee and, just all around that. Weatherford, Tahlequah, Elva, and Ada. And we had been everywhere in Oklahoma.
Well, you know what? I want this bus to get started because I want to get down to Oklahoma. You're making it sound great. I'm excited. Obviously, we're only going there for a weekend, but it'll still be pretty cool. Let's talk about some of these stats. I have all these stat sheets, and if I'm going to print them out and spend my 24 cents, then I'm going to get the most out of it. So let's start in 1985. So you actually led the team in 1985 in innings pitched, and added 58 at bats with it. So did you ever hit while you pitched?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because I know was the DH prominent back then?
So honestly, Coach Dew was a master of lineup construction.
Okay.
And we did a lot of pitcher DH. And so if I threw 4 or 5 innings, and I was hitting well as the DH, I stayed in the game, and then your relief pitcher came in, and you stayed in the DH spot.
Right.
And even into my years of coaching, I had a lot of good pitchers who were also some of my better hitters, and so I would always list them as a pitcher DH. And so if we needed to pull them, they stayed in the DH spot in the order.
Right. Now that is unheard of. I can't remember. I can't even think. I couldn't even tell you if a pitcher has hit like in the lineup. Like the last one I would think of is Davey Demeter.
Yep.
Because he'd come in to close.
Correct.
And he wouldn't be taken out of the lineup because he was our 3-hole guy. And how can you take him out?
Well, Steve Olson.
Yeah,
who you know.
Oh, and I would love to get him on the podcast because he's definitely got some good stories. Because he always coached at Jamestown too.
Yes,
he
did.
Head football coach, correct?
No, he was their head baseball coach.
Head baseball coach.
So we, as teammates, coached against each other.
We should have put him right there in a second chair. But I need to get him on. Are there any other like games that you remember from your freshman year that stick out to you as ones, I remember my freshman year 14-inning game, right? Like that one I'll never forget. Do you have any of those kind of games that stick out to you?
I think playing in Phillips, just your first college experience, and one of my best friends, the best man at my wedding, his name is Mark Sand, and he's 2 years older than me. And Mark's got the saves record here for saves in a career and in a year, and
9 saves.
Yeah, he had 9 saves, and I remember we played Phillips, and they had the Phillies uniforms.
So red pinstripes.
Yeah, they were just very intimidating.
Right.
Also, and they had this big catcher, and in a doubleheader against them. Mark came in to close the game, and he gave up a home run to their catcher, and this catcher hit it over the scoreboard. They had a huge scoreboard in center field, and it was like, wow. I mean, I'm like, okay, this is we didn't see kids like this growing up in North Dakota, or young men. Anyway, and he comes in the second game to close it and faces the same guy and strikes him out.
Yep.
And that I didn't have anything to do with it, but it's my vivid memory, and I learned so much from Mark, and he was a sidearm specialist and had a great sidearm slider, and that's what he ended up getting the guy on. Made him look foolish, but so that was like, hey, welcome to college baseball.
That's cool.
And just guys threw hard, and had great stuff, and you just hope that you were able to get yourself in a good count.
Yeah. No, I remember I didn't play. I think I came in 9th inning as a defensive replacement in my first college game, and it was the same thing. The ball just seemed, it was a little firmer. It was like, it was a cleaner game. Yeah, it was.
What's with the heavy baseballs in college?
Yes. I was like, then you get used to it, obviously, especially when you get thrown into the fire. You have the chance to, lay it out on the line here and kind of get used to it. So, 1986. Now, I'm looking at your at-bats, 154 at-bats. That couldn't have come all from pitching. You probably were playing positions.
Yeah, I played second base when I wasn't pitching that year. And actually, that 154 at-bats was a school record at that time.
Wow.
Which now is just like average.
Yes.
But, I was a kid, my son, we talk about it, I'm like, I got probably 2 years of eligibility left because we just didn't play the number of games you guys did.
That's what I was seeing on the stats. Like,
yeah.
There's this, 49 here is typical.
Yep.
But then 80, I was looking at like 70. I went through like 76, like the lowest to like 90. And 76, it was like 19, 20 games. So, but what else? And then you also led an innings pitch too, and had the second best ERA. Your buddy Darren Lowe beat you out by .04. Yeah. So you were 3.5 and he was a 3.46.
and the 9 wins that year was a school record.
Wow. I didn't see that.
I look, and of course what I remember is my losses that year. I think we should.
I'll give you the sheet if you want to take a look.
The 4 losses were hard losses. I think 2 of them were in Oklahoma, in really tight games, and that was probably, when I think back, should have won 12 games that year, which is really crazy. But we also hit the ball really well, and I had a lot of run support, obviously, because a 3.5 ERA is in those days was not, it was okay. It was good for me. I was not. Darren Lowe was the real deal. Steve Olson was the real deal. Like when you had us three going, we were gonna win a lot of series.
Yeah.
Just because we pitched till we couldn't pitch.
Right.
I mean, there was no those were not bullpen days.
No.
Yeah, that was a really good year, and interesting enough, the sophomore year, and I also hit 2 in the lineup behind a guy named Tyler Schlecht, who has most of the stolen base records and base on ball records.
Yep, I see. I do look because Mark Potts actually this summer made an excellent record book, and it's like the top 20, so you can see kind of year to year, like, and I've found your name, and I know Schlett is one that stands out to me.
Yeah,
quick guy, obviously.
Yeah, and so he was our leadoff hitter. So when he got on base, you imagine I didn't see breaking pitch ever. Because he was stealing second and stealing third. So that's why that was my best offensive year. And after that year, then I didn't hit second. We had Tim Pinky, who was a left-handed hitting center fielder, hit second, and Tim benefited from having Tyler in that one hole. So, but yeah, it was a really good experience. We had a lot of really good players, and I benefited from having great teammates that year.
So I see you have 1 home run. Can you talk to me about that home run? Where was it? Who'd you hit it off of?
It wouldn't have been at Valley City. It was probably in Jamestown, and it was probably to right center.
Yeah.
That was kind of my strength area. I think that in my career, I only hit 2 home runs at Charlie Brown.
Okay.
And they were in the same day.
Really?
Against University of North Dakota.
Wow.
Probably my either junior or senior year.
Let me look.
And I could tell you who they were off of, and I could tell you both of them hit the scoreboard.
Yep.
And I had 2 saves and 2 home runs on that day. We beat UND twice. I had to save in both games, and because at the end of my career, Coach Dew moved me to the bullpen and just like, okay, you're going to throw every day because you can. Your arms is never sore,
right? So
you're going to throw whenever we need to have you throw. And so I played third base and then came in much like Demeter did, where I was just going to get used when I got used,
right? And
so that's how I got my innings and how I got my time.
So yeah, I see it's your senior year because you had 1 home run your junior year.
Yeah, home runs were not my thing.
No, they're not mine either.
That was not going to be. That was not going to be something that happened. We had guys that did that. The all-time home run hitter was a teammate, Stacy Fitter. He's in our Hall of Fame as well.
He has 5 or 45 or something like that.
Stacy was a good hitter, and it's a little different. We were told to get on base. We were going to be table setters, and guys like Steve Olson and Fitter and some of our other guys were going to hit you in.
Yeah. No, I want to kind of go back now and play with you, and it seems like it's a fun time, and that's awesome. Like I said, I wanted to kind of pick your brain on some of the stats. I know it's probably just sounds like I'm geeking out on baseball right now, but it's a good story. But let's pivot to your coaching career days, because as much as I'd love to talk baseball for hours, we kind of got a schedule to follow. So you were an offensive coordinator for the football team. Let's start with that again, since it's the first season. Talk about that. You were showing us one of your plays. We had a team meeting. What was it? Not long ago. It was a hitters meeting, and you were showing us the one play. So talk about being an offensive coordinator.
Loved being an offensive coordinator. Again, I had the benefit of playing for Coach Dew, who was as innovative at that time as anybody and was an offensive master. And even when he was done coaching, he continued to be a professor here and taught in the health and physical education department. And so we took a lot of the things that he taught and we just grew it from there. And he would come out to practice, and he loved going into the huddle and hearing verbiage that was still the verbiage that he used, but the game develops, and so we just expounded upon what it was. And I think that the great thing about all sports and what I learned from really good mentors is that when you watch the game, don't watch the ball. If you're really good at it, you're going to know where the ball's going.
Yep.
You need to watch everything else around it. And I think that's a key to being an offensive coordinator is, everybody thinks it's pretty easy. And I always say, okay, when the play's over, you got 7 seconds. Give me your formation. Give me your position substitution. Give me your play call. You got to know your down and distance. You got to know your, like I said, the personnel, which is why, and we huddled. We didn't go at the line of scrimmage like they do now. And I still think that there's merit in being in the huddle, and there are so many things that get said in the huddle that you just can't say at the line of scrimmage. And I think there's a lot of merit to that still. And I get the reason for having that fast tempo, but I think you can do both. And so football was great, and it allowed you to have some of that confusion that was really good and made you love your other sport that you coached as well. And again, I recruited a lot of 2-sport athletes. Like my best baseball guys were probably football guys as well. Mm-hmm. And so, and then I really enjoyed just the 3 years I had with Coach Dew, and then when he was done, and Coach Mack and Coach Horner. Coach Horner was a teammate of mine in college, and so having those guys come in '94 was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed our years that we got to coach together, 13, 14 seasons that we coached together, and they've went on to obviously just become historic, and being at 30 years. And so I've been very blessed to have a lot of really good people that I've been able to coach with, and the state tournament this past weekend in New Rockford wins Class B 9-man. And Elliot Belquist was one of our coaches we had on staff. And, there's a long lineage of people that have went out and have been successful, and we've had the opportunity. My first offensive line coach is in the NFL now, coaching with the Titans.
Wow.
And we've really ran into a lot of really good people.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to be able to say the same things when I'm out of here too, and all those stories and all those good people that, make up your experience. And so when did you start as an offensive coordinator?
Actually, my first 3 years, I was a defensive backs coach, which was really good for me because I got to learn the defensive side of the game before you become an offensive coordinator. It's really important to understand what defenses are trying to do. And what I took from that is that when you go to be a successful offensive coordinator, I think one of the key components is that they trust their eyes. And so you need to do things that makes them not trust what they're seeing. You need to fool with their eyes, and that's one of the structural things that I think is a big component of coaching offensive football is you have to fool with what they're seeing. And if you can do that and they can't trust their eyes all the time, there's going to always be doubt. So I spent 3 years on that side, and then when we made the coaching change, then I moved over to be the offensive coordinator, and that's where I stayed until I was done.
What did your trick play package look like?
Oh, man.
Do you have any that stick out that were like, Philly from the Super Bowl, right? Just do you have a play like a signature?
I always, to this day, when I see the Hail Mary situation and the success rate on that, we like to do a mesh route combination, so a crossing route in the middle that then ended up being a hook and lateral type situation, and it could be one or it could be two of them. That was probably the trick play situation that we just had to be prepared for all those situations. I can't say that we ran a ton of trick plays, but I think we ran a lot of things that messed with people, so it was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Mess with people, fool the eyes, like you just said.
Fool the eyes, yep. Deception. Try to give your quarterbacks as easy of throws as possible, So it was fun. I know Coach Mack probably wasn't sad to see me go because we did. In those days, we watched a lot of Thursday night football, and I had our team watch a lot of Thursday night football because it was the wide open football night.
Right.
And so we would see things, and our offense was kind of such where you could just throw anything in and make it work. And so we would come to practice on Fridays, and we'd put some new plays in. And I can't say that always made our head coach real happy because you need to run it on somebody before,
Right.
But it was just little tweaks. It was our halftime adjustments that we were making a day early.
Right.
So, yeah. So those are the fun things.
Right. And so how did that kind of, I guess, help your baseball coaching career? Because now obviously you did both.
Yep.
And you were a head coach for the baseball team, obviously. How did that kind of go hand in hand with what you did with the baseball team?
So in those days, you didn't have off-season contact. You couldn't have off-season contact with your athletes. So it's not like you're coaching them year-round. You had them specifically from January 5th to the end of the school year for baseball. And so we did things. We organized. We had our leaders on the baseball team take care of how we did stuff in the fall, and gave them some responsibility, and that's just kind of how things work. But it kind of kept you fresh. You didn't get burnt out. So now when football season's done, now you can adjust your mindset to something else, and it kept you sharp in terms of, again, they talk about playing different sports is good for you because of muscle confusion.
Right.
Coaching different sports is good for you because you got to think differently. You're using a different part of your brain to think analytically, more patient on the baseball side, and in the football side, it's having a little bit more repetitive, and it happens a lot faster, and so it's a different way of approaching each of them.
Interesting. And so what are some of your favorite stories coaching baseball? Because you obviously coached baseball for quite a while here. Actually, quick, before I go to that, you're talking about the leaders in the fall for the baseball team. Did you guys ever play fall games in your time? Okay.
No, we didn't. That is something actually I started when I became a commissioner.
Okay.
It was one of the things that we got through because we felt it was important for the northern schools to have as many games under their belt when it came time for postseason determinations. And, Mayville had went 30-8 one year and didn't make the national playoffs. If they'd have played 10 more games, that team that fall, they probably would have went 40-8, and they would have got a bid. And so that was the impetus behind, at least give us the opportunity to get to the maximum number of games that we could play, which is 55 in those days.
Right, and now it's down to 50, obviously.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting because I know this is the first year we're not playing fall games, but that's also because now we can go February, the first weekend of February, and start playing teams right away.
Yeah.
And I think that was the goal of it. But coaching baseball, some of your favorite memories from coaching. I know you had a story one time you told me. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but it was about, I think you threw a pitcher 2 days in a row or something in the conference tournament.
Eric Olson.
Yes.
So Eric Olson, if you check the record books, has the record for wins in a single season.
I can look at it now while you tell the story.
And Eric had 9, and that would have tied him with 2 other people, Darren Lowe and another person. And he threw in the conference tournament. We're up in Minot, and he did not throw very well. And he probably threw 3 or 4 innings. And he was a senior, and really was a good job. Was a good pitcher in that he used all of his stuff. He was a frustrating pitcher to face. And so we had a conversation. I just said, Eric, I'd love to have you throw again tomorrow because I think you have better in you than what we saw from you today. And he goes, Coach, if you would give me that opportunity, I'd take it. And I said, you need to make the decision because it's not often that you're going to have somebody throw back to back, but I'll leave that up to you. And he said, I'm a senior. I'd love to do it. I'm not going anywhere. And so he went out and threw and got the win and got his 10th win. Which gave him the school record, which is really a cool thing for him.
Yeah.
Because he was just a kid that rode a wave that year. And he reminded me a lot of other guys that we've had that have just had a lot of things go right. And it reminded me a lot of my sophomore year, And so I'm like, we want to get you that record. And we went out and he did the work and he got it done, which is awesome.
That is an awesome story. And I know you did tell me that one. I wish I knew Might have been my sophomore year, but again, like I said, like the years they go by so quick, and it's like you can never remember what was said what year. Do you have any other stories, like any, you know, travel or like what were your spring trips when you were the head coach here?
So we went to Oklahoma City.
That's right.
Almost every year, and then the last 2 years we went to Phoenix, to the Russ Matt Invitational. In 2000,
the Russ Matt was in Phoenix.
Yeah, well, it was so Russ Matt was in several different places. So
Okay.
in 2005, we went to Phoenix and played in it, and we got caught in traffic and almost did not make our game. And I'm one of those, I need to be at the field 2 hours before first pitch because it's just how we back things up. And
Preparation,
how we do,
yep.
right? And be quick but not in a hurry.
Yes.
Right? And so that next year in 2006, my last year, then we went to Pensacola to the Russ Mat. So they had another one there. And so we went to Pensacola and had a great start to the year. I think we were 9-1 or something like that. And I fondly remember that group because, you know, I don't have a ton of I have a ton of memories and not a ton of stories, so to speak.
Right.
With coaching, because it was, you know, by the time I look at it now, it's 39 seasons of college athletics, including, you know, 2 years ago coaching softball. It was my 39th season.
Right.
And so that particular group was a fun group because I learned a lot in 2004 from a gentleman named Bruce Brown who was the leader of called Proactive Coach, and he came to our campus and he sat down with us as a coaching staff, and it changed my life as a coach and how, you know, I apologize to my players when I see them that I coached prior to 2004 because I was not a very good coach.
Mm-hmm.
I had way more in me to give, and I was concerned about things that I shouldn't have been concerned about, like the sport itself instead of the individual. And once I learned it was about the individual, coaching became really rewarding, and I was a way better coach. And I was always going to know more football or know more baseball than the guys I coached.
Mm-hmm.
Why was I so worried about it? I needed to know more about them.
Mm-hmm.
And once he showed that was the importance and that's where the satisfaction came, then I just loved what I did. And I was way better as a coach. And that team overachieved remarkably.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we stole tons of bases. We got on base at a high level. Our pitchers threw strikes. We worked fast. We had a really nice team. And I'll always remember that group and starting out 9-1 and having guys hit game-winning home runs that maybe never hit some in their life.
Yeah.
You know, but it's because you planted the seed of confidence in them and said, hey, I think you have this in you, and they just believed it.
I love that. That's awesome. To me, if that's kind of the last thing we talk about coaching, that I'm so happy with that. But yeah, I would like to pivot. Now, obviously, you're in a different role. Obviously, I said director of the foundation.
Yep.
You had a completely different, but you said I did okay. I did okay.
You did great.
Okay.
You did great.
Thank you. And so I'd love to know kind of, you know, what are some of your favorite memories now in this role, or what some of your, you know, kind of how this experience is different. You know, now you're not a coach, you're involved in something different, but you still do have, you know, we know you're with the baseball team quite a bit. You know, just as far as like not an official coach, but obviously we'll go to you for torque drill.
Yeah.
Torque drill. We've been doing that, by the way.
Awesome.
So how's that kind of different than coaching? Like you're in a different role here.
First of all, the role that I'm in is really, really humbling.
Mm-hmm.
We have 12,000 alumni, and to really be kind of that person with our staff. I have an awesome staff that's trying to lead this university and provide things that the state does not provide for us, and the funding and the buildings and you know, just giving the experience to all of the students is really humbling to be the person that's in charge of that. We have a great university. We have a great alumni base. We have people that are tremendous. It's I can't say enough about this place, and I think there's just something special about it that people, you can't quantify it and you can't explain it,
100% agree.
but you can feel it.
Yep.
And anybody that gets to experience that knows what I'm talking about. And just to be at the front of that, it's there's some sleepless nights involved with it, because we got to continue to move this thing forward. And I just couldn't represent a better place. And I'm really proud of it. I love the students that are on this campus. We hope they have the best experience possible. I love having conversations with them. I love talking about, we got to change our best. We got to chase improvement. We've got to, wake up every day and believe that we have our choice as to how this day is going to go. And I think that mental performance side and that coaching part will never leave. And I think that's kind of the part that I really appreciate getting to do, is to explain to you that, Jaden, you need to have the courage to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Just have that courage and let it go, and enjoy what you do, and don't get caught up in the things that are outside your boat. Like, if it's outside your boat, let it go. Let's just take care of the things that we can control, and let go of all the other things and enjoy the moment. And we're never going to have those things back. And I'd love to be able to trade spots with you right now.
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to live college athletics through my kids a little bit, and just getting to watch. And it was so much fun. We had chased a World Series for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And in my daughter's last year, they get a chance to go to the World Series. That was the greatest experience ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then to get the opportunity to coach with her, and get the opportunity now to spend time with my son as he works a little bit with you guys. Those are great things, all provided by a great university.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I literally can't wipe the smile off my face. You're just saying some great things, and some things that are relevant to anybody. Control what you can control. We hear that all the time, but the way you said it, the way you put it, was excellent. And talking about your son Brady, we need to have him on the podcast. Come on, Brady. Like, we want to get some alumni on this too, right? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, no, working with you and Brady has been awesome. And I know personally, I really appreciate what you do for us. And I'm never not going to say hi when I walk past you. This is one of the guys you talk to on campus for sure.
The door is always open. I'd like to tell even our coaches that when we have the opportunity to talk about it, I'm like, ask questions, because I'm telling you, I made all the mistakes as a player and as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
as a father, as a husband. I've made all the mistakes, probably as an employee, and you learn, and when you fail, growth occurs. And I could say I've probably grown a lot. The door is always open. I mean, if our students here and you have something you want to talk through, we can get you through things. We're not going to tell you, but you're going to help. We're going to allow you to help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, getting to talk to the baseball team, that was awesome. I
Oh,
love talking about those
it.
things. And so our mind is really a powerful thing, and we spend so much time on skills and drills and things like that, but we need to spend as much time on the mental performance side.
I love that. Well, Cory, this has been phenomenal having you on, and I'm so glad you said yes, and especially on short notice. Texted you Sunday, and then you're liking my message right away, and definitely someone that from the beginning of this podcast I said we're going to have Cory Anderson on. But Cory, we really appreciate having you on, and thank you so much. And any final words? You've said we could put this on inspirational anything. No.
Thanks for what you guys do. There's a lot of great people here, and I am one of the people that has the opportunity to work here, and there's a lot of really good ones. We have great leadership. When you can just talk to the president at any time that you want, that doesn't happen a lot.
No.
I've worked for about 5 presidents here, give or take over the years. And so, our leadership is in a really good position, and we have a good cabinet. We have really good employees, and our professors are engaged. And I think that you guys all feel that, and that's really important.
100%. Well, thank you everyone for listening. This has been episode 5 of the Viking Voices podcast. I'm Jaden Babiak with Cory Anderson, and we say so long.